In the year 193, the Roman Empire was sold at auction, not by the Senate, not by an invader, by its own bodyguards. The winning bid was 25,000 sesterces per guard, roughly 10 years' salary for every single man on the security detail. The buyer put on the purple robe the same evening. He lasted 66 days. By the end of this video, you'll know what it has cost to keep the most powerful person alive in every era, from the price list of Rome's Praetorian Guard to the $27 million Meta now spends every year protecting Mark Zuckerberg, which is more than Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, and Alphabet spend on their chief executives combined. And you'll understand the problem no amount of money has ever solved. The person best positioned to protect you is, by definition, the person best positioned to destroy you. Start with the bill Augustus created. When Augustus became Rome's first emperor, he faced a security paradox. Republican law prohibited armed troops inside the city of Rome, but an emperor whose power rested on the army could not walk around the capital unguarded. His solution was the Praetorian Guard, 9 elite cohorts, the only soldiers allowed near the seat of power, and because they were special, they were paid like it. Under Augustus, an ordinary legionary earned around 900 sesterces a year. A Praetorian earned roughly 1,500 to 1,800, about double, later rising to 3,000 for shorter service, in the comfort of the capital, far from any frontier. Augustus even remembered them in his will, leaving a bonus to every soldier as a gesture of gratitude. That gesture became the most expensive precedent in Roman history. Because here's what Augustus had actually built. He'd created a group of armed men whose only job was proximity to power, and proximity to power is a commodity. Within a decade of his death, the Guard's own commander, Sejanus, had concentrated the cohorts into a single fortified camp in Rome and made himself the second most powerful man in the empire, running it in all but name while the Emperor Tiberius lived on an island. The bodyguard had discovered that guarding the throne and controlling it are separated by nothing but intention. Then, in the year 41, the intention changed. The Emperor Caligula was murdered in a palace corridor by officers of his own Praetorian Guard, and what the Guard did next set the price of imperial security for the next 2 centuries. Searching the palace, the story goes, they found Caligula's uncle Claudius hiding behind a curtain, and instead of killing him, they proclaimed him emperor. Claudius, who understood exactly what had just happened, paid every guardsman a donative of 15,000 sesterces, roughly 5 years' salary per man. That payment created a market. From Claudius onward, every new emperor was expected to pay the Guard an accession bonus, a donative for their loyalty. It wasn't a gift anymore. It was a fee. And like every fee collected by someone holding a sword, it only moved in one direction. The year 69 proved what happened to customers who disputed the invoice. The Emperor Galba, a stern old general, took the throne and refused to pay the donative the Guard expected. He explained that he selected his soldiers. He did not buy them. The Guard's response was to find a nobleman named Otho who would pay 5,000 sesterces a man and to kill Galba in the middle of the Roman Forum. Otho, the paying customer, became emperor. He was dead within 3 months, but the lesson survived him. The security subscription was no longer optional. For the next century, the arrangement held in an uneasy equilibrium. Emperors paid, the Guard protected, and occasionally edited. They were involved, directly or through their commanders, in the deaths of Commodus, of Caracalla, of Elagabalus. The most dangerous job in the Roman world was not gladiator or frontier soldier. It was being the person the Praetorians were paid to keep alive. And then came the year 193, when the whole system said the quiet part at auction volume. The Emperor Pertinax, a disciplined reformer, the son of a former slave, took the throne and tried to do something genuinely radical. He tried to audit the security budget. He moved to curb the guards' privileges and pay them less than they had been promised. He lasted 87 days before the guard killed him in the palace. What followed is one of the most extraordinary scenes in political history. With the throne empty, two wealthy senators arrived at the Praetorian camp, Sulpicianus, the dead emperor's father-in-law, who was inside the walls making his case, and Didius Julianus, who stood outside the gate. And they began to bid. For the Roman Empire, per guardsman, Sulpicianus offered 20,000 sesterces a man. Julianus, shouting his bids over the wall, went to 25,000, around 10 years of a Praetorian salary per soldier, multiplied across thousands of soldiers. In today's terms, historians put the total price of the winning bid somewhere in the hundreds of millions of dollars. The guard opened the gates, proclaimed Julianus emperor, and marched him to the Senate, which confirmed the purchase under the persuasive argument of several thousand drawn swords. It bought him 66 days. The provincial legions, disgusted, marched on Rome behind Septimius Severus. The Senate, reading the wind, condemned Julianus to death. His recorded last words were, "But what evil have I done?" Which is, when you think about it, the perfect epitaph for a man who did nothing except pay the asking price. And here is the detail that proves the problem was structural, not moral. Severus, the avenging reformer, disbanded the entire Praetorian Guard for disloyalty and rebuilt it from his own trusted legions. Then he paid the new guard a donative of 5,000 denarii per man, one of the largest in Roman history. Even the man who fired the bodyguards for taking bribes had to bribe their replacements. The institution survived every purge because the problem was never the men. The problem is what proximity to power is worth. It took more than a century and the Emperor Constantine to finally abolish the guard outright and demolish their fortress, the only security reform in Roman history that actually worked. He didn't renegotiate the contract, he deleted the vendor. Now jump 17 centuries, because this line item never left the books. It just moved from the imperial treasury to the corporate proxy statement. Every spring, America's public companies file documents disclosing what they pay their executives, and buried in those filings is the modern donative, the personal security budget. In 2024, according to an analysis by the Financial Times, 10 major technology companies spent more than $45 million protecting their chief executives, and one company towers over all of them. Meta spent over $27 million in a single year protecting Mark Zuckerberg and his family, up from $24 million the year before. That is more than Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, and Alphabet spent protecting their CEOs combined. For scale, Nvidia spent $3.5 million on Jensen Huang. Apple spent $1.4 million on Tim Cook, Amazon spent about $1.1 million on its CEO, and $1.6 million on Jeff Bezos, a figure that has barely moved in 15 years. JP Morgan, the most powerful bank on earth, spends under $900,000 guarding Jamie Dimon. Zuckerberg's protection costs roughly 10 Jamie Dimons. Meta's own explanation in its filing is almost Roman in its clarity. Zuckerberg, it says, is synonymous with Meta, negative sentiment about the company transfers directly to him. Translation: the man is the asset, and the asset, unlike the servers, can be harmed. If the number sounds irrational, run it the way a Roman would. $27 million is a fraction of 1% of Meta's value. If the market believes the company's fortunes are welded to one irreplaceable founder, then the security budget isn't a perk. It's key man insurance paid in bodyguards. The Praetorians cost Rome a fortune for the same reason. The empire had made one man's heartbeat a systemic risk, and systemic risks are expensive to insure. And the whole market just repriced. In December of 2024, a Fortune 500 chief executive was shot and killed on a Manhattan sidewalk on his way to an investor meeting. The corporate response was immediate and industry-wide. Companies scrubbed executive photos from their websites. Boards mandated private air travel. The number of S&P 500 companies paying for executive security jumped to roughly a third, and the spending followed. Alphabet and Amazon raised protection budgets by double digits. Intel went from $3,000 of executive security spending to $250,000, an increase of over 8,000% in a single year. The donative, as Rome could have told you, only moves in one direction. There is one difference between the eras, and it is worth naming precisely. A modern executive protection detail is a contractor, vetted, compartmentalized, replaceable, and paid by the company rather than empowered to choose its leadership. The industry has spent a century engineering away the Praetorian problem. No single guard force holds a monopoly on access, and none of them get a vote. That is the actual innovation, not better bodyguards, better contract structure. Rome's mistake was never hiring guards. It was creating a single, permanent, armed institution whose consent the throne required, and then acting surprised when the institution discovered its own pricing power. So, when you see that $27 million line in a proxy statement, read it the way a Roman senator would have. It is not the cost of stopping an attacker. Most years, there is no attacker. It is the cost of making one man's survival a solved problem, so that a $3 trillion company never has to discover in real time what his absence costs. The Praetorians put an exact number on the alternative: 25,000 sesterces per man, shouted over a wall. Every security budget since has been an attempt to never, ever find out the modern number.